Hi guys, I hope you're having a good day. I'd like to start this off by saying a quick thank you to all the people who in the last couple of weeks have liked, subscribed and watched my videos. My performance analysis of Metro Exodus is likely to be my first 1000 views video. I really appreciate it, so thank you all. Today I will be looking at performance in Cyberpunk 2077's latest patch 1.23 and also how that performance changes with an unofficial DLSS 2.2 modification. For those of you that don't know, it is possible to copy in the DLL from the latest Rainbow 6 patch that includes the latest generic DLSS updates. This isn't as good as a developer implemented DLSS update, but since it's getting some attention as an option, I thought I'd give it a look here. First up, we need to establish something to compare that to, and unlike Metro Exodus, Cyberpunk is a bit odd to establish performance. First of all, it has a bunch of different settings, some of which effectively overwrite one another, and more importantly, there are several different types of environment that use the various options differently and sometimes not at all. This means no one test area can give an accurate example of the playing experience and why performance can seem to be all over the place. Sadly, it often is, but that's an artifact of ambitious design as much as anything else. So I've broken testing down as much as possible to 3 areas with minimal NPCs: indoors, the city at night, and an area outside of the city in the day, and then a much more complicated market at night scene with NPCs. I'm using 1440p and the ray tracing medium preset as a base, which is the same as ultra settings. In ray tracing I'm also turning on reflections. First off, we have a very simple corridor with no ray tracing or DLSS enabled, so effectively 1440p ultra. Coming in from the right, we have balanced DLSS, which here shows minimal visual quality difference. And if I dissolve the red line, it looks like just one image. On this simple scene, balanced DLSS is providing around 25% higher frame rate. But as frame rates are good in this example anyway, DLSS isn't really needed here. So on to ray tracing, where it is important. The same corridor, but now with ray tracing on, no DLSS, and as you can see, frame rates have taken a big hit, going from around 120 to mid-40s. Other than the reflections, the visual impact is tiny for all of that frame rate, and this is a small empty corridor in an area of the map with no NPCs, while standing still. Ray tracing makes DLSS essential in Cyberpunk, so let's have a look at what effect it has here. I'm leaving out ultra performance mode in these tests because in my opinion it introduces too much blur and you should just lower settings instead. Of the remaining ultra, balanced and performance modes, all achieve a 60 plus FPS here, but this is just an empty corridor. Next up we have the Biotechnica area outside of Night City, and here DLSS does a great job. Each step of DLSS provides extra frame rate for minimal loss of fidelity and a similar ratio of performance increase to the indoor scene. 45-ish FPS of native is tolerable for walking a straight line, but again, this isn't the game at its most demanding. Here we have the city at night, and I've turned crowd density to low here to eliminate any CPU influence that we might have, but at high crowd density this area is usually much busier and performance is impacted by that. I unfortunately moved the view for performance mode, but I don't think it alters the result. We can see here that native rendering is a very sub-optimal experience and quality DLSS is only just maintaining 60 FPS. Now, it is basically impossible to get exact comparisons in combat or even just walking down the street due to the random nature of the game, but all of these scenes represent maximum frame rates you could expect in these areas, and they could easily drop as low as half what's shown here for brief periods. For that reason I would recommend on a 3070 or similar GPU either skipping ray tracing entirely, or only having reflections on, as rasterized lighting and shadows saves quite a lot of performance. In fact, in some situations, shadows particularly look better without ray tracing than with it on. But does DLSS 2.2 make a difference? I just want to put in a disclaimer here, as DLSS 2.2 is not officially supported and any modifications to game files are done at your own risk. I expect an improved DLSS implementation, be it 2.2 or 2.3, will happen in a future patch, as it is as simple as patching it in for a developer, and such an implementation will be better than doing it yourself. And supported of course. I have chosen to test on performance mode, as any difference between the two implementations will be most noticeable the stronger DLSS is applied. First of all, we'll have the same area outside Embers, and at first glance it's done nothing. In fact, while both frame rates are within run-to-run variance of each other, the the old implementation might actually be slightly faster. However, I've spent a bit of time looking closely at the two, and I think the 2.2 image is ever so slightly better. And also, it is using 1GB less VRAM, dropping reported buffer size from 7.2GB to 6.3, so it is doing something at least. In our other outdoor area, frame rates are identical, so much so I initially thought it was the same clip while watching it back. Adding to this is that I cannot see any visual difference at all. In fact, this was the first area I compared between the two versions, and was disappointed that it hadn't done anything. But we are again seeing a saving of VRAM, this time only 700MB-ish, but it is consistent. Now the corridor, and as expected we have a reduction in VRAM buffer utilisation, the smallest yet and about half a gig, but it's still there, and we also have a fairly consistent 2 extra FPS, which isn't exciting and could just be margin of error as we are at 90 FPS anyway, but might be a sign of improvement. So for a final test I thought I'd try something less controlled and far more demanding, a walk through a market at night. One of the most demanding areas of the game, and even with crowds on low, it is a struggle for my system to hit 60 FPS while recording, even on performance DLSS. To my surprise, VRAM usage is up a little bit, but so is performance, often by around 10% and a couple of times more than 40%, which is more than enough to be beyond run-to-run variances, even accounting for random NPC spawns. Here is that same area again, but on quality DLSS, and the margins are much closer, as well as more variance in NPC spawns, but there's still often a 10% improvement using DLSS 2.2, and at best a 55% increase, although that should definitely be considered to be an outlier. Before you rush out to try this for yourselves, I would like to reiterate that I am not recommending you do so, and to wait for an official patch, as there is no way to know if it will cause any problems. After running my tests, I did decide to run around for a while just to look for any odd behaviour, and it only took a couple of minutes before I noticed some. First of all, these two artifacts, lines, whatever they are, near the model of the Overwatch sniper rifle. I use this weapon a lot, and they're definitely not normally there. In addition to this, a couple of times while not recording, random textures went very grainy for a couple of seconds, including a fire effect. I've never seen that particular issue before in and around 300 hours of playtime. Yeah, I like Cyberpunk despite its issues. This, by the way, is footage taken without ray-traced shadows or lighting on and auto DLSS. A setting I didn't include in my testing because, well, it's auto and I have no control over how much DLSS it uses at any one time. It is the setting I would recommend to actually use on this hardware though, as most of the really bad dips in FPS in fast motion are smoothed out by it, and you still get good visuals equivalent to quality DLSS when performance allows. So, to sum up, Cyberpunk's performance has improved since launch, but there is certainly still work to do, and DLSS 2.2 or higher once implemented officially should help with that, for owners of compatible graphics cards anyway. A far bigger problem that I didn't really touch on, but you may have noticed or be aware of, is that the game often fails to fully utilise the GPU, resulting in lower frame rates than necessary, and the general lack of PC optimizations. CDPR have spent half a year getting the game running on obsolete consoles, yet relatively powerful PCs are left making substantial compromises. Just adding in ray trace reflections at 1440p using aggressive DLSS slows my 3070 to 30 something FPS sometimes, even in areas without noticeable reflective textures. Meanwhile, Metro Exodus can be fully ray traced even at 4K with less potent DLSS and achieve 60 FPS. Sure, Night City is a more complex game world, but people shouldn't be dealing with poor performance 7 months after launch, even with nice looking puddles. Prior to the launch of AMD's FSR, I'm sure they had a list of future games that included Cyberpunk, but I cannot find any trace of it now. However, should it be included in the future, it might be very useful, as at the moment the only way to get ray tracing is to use DLSS, and DLSS uses tensor cores, like ray tracing. This splits the use of those cores, whereas FSR doesn't require specific hardware, and so would free up the tensor cores of that workload, so they could be utilised solely for ray tracing, which might actually make it viable. If FSR is included in the future, I will do a follow-up piece testing that out. Anyway, I hope you found the video informative. and if you've tried out DLSS 2.2, I'd be interested to hear how it worked out for you, so please leave a comment and let me know. And also let me know if you'd be interested in me doing a review or look at Cyberpunk not focused on performance. It's something I'm thinking of doing, but if people ask me for it, then I will, and if not, well, I might try it anyway. If you've made it to the end of the video, thank you very much, and maybe you consider giving it a like. It really helps the videos of small channels like mine to be seen, and of course it lets me know if content like this is wanted. I wonder how many people will know where I've nicked this from, but have a very nerdy day.